Hey, what's going on, guys? How all you're doing? Welcome to a new video tutorial from IPNews. In today's one, we're gonna explain, or we're gonna just walk you through about MongoDB database or MongoDB. So if you're not familiar with this, it's another type of database. If you're just familiar with MySQL databases or just SQLite, also there's the MongoDB. I've already opened up that. Also a MongoDB, and it's non-SQL database, which means a non-rational database. I will explain that in a second, but it's a very nice database, especially for web developers or for web applications, web projects in general. And it's give you a really flexible structure of data gets stored, and a very nice way to retrieve and store and save data and update and delete like the crew things. So create, read, update, and delete from this database. It give you really nice things to manipulate that. And it's free for child to use, of course, for at least for your own server and for your own small project and for getting started. So you need firstly to download this and install it on your machine, whether you're running Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X. It's freely available for you. So just go to the mongodb.com over here, just go to the download section over there and choose your server. So go to the community server and here choose your Linux, Mac OS X. I'm having Windows, and download the MSI. After that, just quick install it whatever you want on whatever disk you want, and make sure to remember which disk you have saved that on, because this is gonna really be very important or be very necessary when we try to start the service later on. And also we're gonna use the projects over here. So we're gonna learn about MongoDB, how we can save or how we can connect to this database, create a database or collection as it's called on the MongoDB namespaces. And actually we're gonna use the latest tutorial, so the latest project from the tutorial, which is the Pokemon's API. If you haven't done this or you haven't watched it, I really recommend going ahead and watch this, because we're gonna use this code. So we're gonna we have in here, if you go ahead and take a look on the server, so we have gone and done this in just a small, or stored the data, the Pokemons, in a small array over here, which is not the best thing to do, and it's not good at all. So you need to move this data into a real database. That's why we're going to use MongoDB. So we're going to convert this into a database and just change what is need to be changed. But before that, we're going to just start over here. So as I've said, after installing this, also I need to explain something in here, is the difference between rational or SQL databases and non-SQL databases. So non-SQL database or MongoDB is a non-SQL database, and for the SQL databases are MySQL, SQLite, and a lot of other things like the Oracle database. So for the SQL database, let me zoom in a bit over here. SQL database, it just have the structure of a table. If you're not familiar with table, it has columns and rows. So each row has a couple of columns and so on and so forth. So whatever or whenever you want to fetch the data or save the data on this database, you need to tell it which row in order to go and look for. After you find the row, tell it which column to insert the data for. So let's say he wanna find the first row. This is the first row, and he wants to find the first column. So you say to go to the first row and insert some data on the first column, and yada. The same thing happens when you try to retrieve data from the SQL database. Rational database also it's called. You can just Google that and you're gonna understand a lot of things. And also now for the non-SQL database, it doesn't work like this. It works like a key value pair. So if you are familiar with JavaScript objects or JSON, so there's the key and there is an object, and the object can be any data type over there, any data type you can reach out, or you can actually use, and the key can be any index or a name or whatever, and a string, I believe. And you can use it if you are familiar with the node graph. So there's a node, and a lot of nodes are connected to each other, and depending on that, using a key and value pair. So this is how it works. It doesn't have the table structure, and it's more flexible for kind of projects, especially as I've said for web applications. So this is the main differences between rational and non-rational or NoSQL databases. You can search for more information about both of these database types, but yeah, this is the main thing you need to understand before going on into the MongoDB. And the other thing I want to talk to you about is that since we are going to use Node.js in here, so as you might have noticed, we're going to use Node.js in order to create the database and manipulate all of this kind of data. So we need like a wrapper around the MongoDB. You still can use the like official MongoDB release over there, but I really do recommend going ahead with the Mongo. So the Mongo's over here, it's a really nice thing. So you just going ahead and downloading it, or it's modular over there available for Node.js, a wrapper around the original one. So you just go ahead and download it and you're good to go. So just npm install Mongos and yeah, you're good to go. Make sure to install it into your project. Now let me just go ahead and create new like two files over here. Let's call this, I don't know, dbtest.js. And the other one, what we need actually is the model. So we need to like define a special schema for how actually our data is going to be stored on this kind of database. So let's just go ahead and define a model, and this is like called a model in the database, or if you are familiar with MVCs like Laravel or something like this. So yeah, so first things first, what we need to do is create the model. So how our data is going to be stored, and since we're going to just use some kind of user's password and stuff, so it's going to be very simple. So first things first, we need to require the Mongos. Just go ahead and say Mongos equals require and find Mongos. It should pop up for you, and obviously now we need to require the schema. So Mongos has this schema already predefined, so make sure to require this object or call it schema equals Mongos dot, I don't know, I can't type or something, sorry. So Mongos dot schema, and you should find that right out of the box over there. And let me just delete this line that has been automatic. Oh man, sorry. So yeah, this should work now. I think, or I believe, the schema is a capital letter since it's a class. So we can use it right now. Now we need to define or create a new schema. So let's, I don't know, let's call this like users. So this is going to be like the users schema, and equals new schema, of course. And here we can pass in an object, and this object can have your structure, your database structure. So you can use whatever, like when you put something like the name over here, this is going to be like your field. So the name is going to be the key, and whenever you insert some data into this, you're going to insert it into the value. So it's going to be the key and value pairs over here. So it just works as simple as that, and you can insert multiple fields or multiple attributes or key value pairs over here, and so on and so forth. And you can store any data types over here. So for example, I'm going to use like a username and a password. So here, username, you can put it also an object in here and define some kind of things. So you can define the type that this is gonna be using, and for this case, username is going to be a string, so you can put a string, and also you can put the required field, which means this field is like specifically required. Whenever you submit a data, this field could not be empty, so you must fill in this field. And you can put the other thing is, let's say, password, for example, and also you can put the type. There's tons of attributes you can manipulate over here. So just checking the Mongos or the MongoDB, the documentation, and it's gonna give you the guide where to what to use actually over here, and all the reference that you need. So here the type also is going to be a string, and also going to be required. So it's very simple. And so also we say required equals true. We can also add some kind of added dates. So let's say for created, I don't know, created ads, some attribute gonna store whenever or when the actual user has been registered on the server. So let's say this is going to take a type, and also you can declare custom types over here. And what I mean by custom types, you can put object types in here. For example, the date is a built-in object from JavaScript, so you can just put it right out of the box and it's gonna do the job for you. That's why really nice thing. And also you can put a default value for this, so you don't need specifically to insert this whenever you create a new user. So you don't need to insert or create it as the data or the value is going to be inserted by default. So you can put date.now function, and this is gonna do the job for us. So yeah, it's very simple. This is how we're gonna work through how actually our schema is very basic and very simple. So you can add a lot of other fields over here and you can manipulate it however you want. And here what we can do is use the export keyword or Node.js keyword in order to work things out. So here we can put like user equals, or let's say not a capital letter over here, equals, and Mongo's has a specific method that gonna convert or compile this schema into a real world model. So it's called model, by the way, and here you put your model name. For example, we're gonna put an uppercase user, and we put our schema, so it's gonna be user, by the way. So the schema we have just defined over there. Now everything is set up correctly. Now we just go to the database test and we need to require this. But first, what we need is actually to go ahead and connect into our database, and for that also obviously we're gonna need to like import our Mongo's modulo, so require Mongo's over here. So it's not actually working over here, I don't know. So Mongo's, it should do the job right now, and Mongo's is being like successfully imported. Now we need also to get this model, so we can do like a user equals require. We can use the require and require our custom files over here. So we can say this and model, and we can tell it to use the user. So yeah, here we are importing this model over here, which is going to be compiled for us from the schema. So it's very simple. You're gonna use it like this. It's very simple and very basic, and actually very nice to use over here. Now we need to connect to the database, and for connecting to the database, like you don't need to create the database. Actually just supply the name and Mongo gonna do the job, or the rest of the job, automatically for you. What I mean by this, if the database already has been created, it's just gonna open it and start or like link you with this instance and return the instance, so you can work with it right out of the box. But rather than if it's not, or otherwise if it's not created, it's just gonna create for you and return the instance. So we're gonna just do that automatically for you, so you don't need to worry about creating a database or not. And before just trying to connect the database, what we need actually to like run the MongoDB server or service actually. So make sure to like cd into the main directory. So let's say you have like gone and installed the MongoDB into the local disk D, or the binaries into the local disk D. Make sure to cd over here to local, say cd d and cd into there. If you have installed it into local disk C, make sure to cd over there. So this is like what I was saying, because if you don't, since I have installed it into the local disk D, I'm cd in there. So if you don't do this, like it's gonna give you a really weird error that you're not gonna understand actually. So make sure to do it like this, that way it's gonna work. So now just type in mongod after installing, of course, the Mongo executable from, just start it on your machine and press enter. And as I've said, make sure to do this. Now the Mongo service is being like initiated. Just wait till you see listening, so till you see this message, waiting for connection on port 27017. So this is like the default port. You can change it by passing in some options on the command line, but this is going to do the job for us very perfectly. So yeah, so 27017 is the port we're going to work on. Now the service is running, so let me just open up a new terminal. So I'm going to use it to run this one. For that, we're going to just call the Mongos and the connect method, and the connect method need to be supplied with a URI, and that URI is a specifically Mongo using this Mongo protocol. So say MongoDB, and like here you put in your local host, since you are running the local host, or you put in your remote server, and over here you say, I believe this is all you need to do. So yeah, and I mean, and the other one is you put / then your database name. So if you want to create any database, anything at all, just put in here database name. For me, let me just name this database users, and yeah, we're good to go right now. Now this is gonna create it for us automatically into the MongoDB, and it's gonna save it for us and return the instance and try to connect. And the other thing, or the second parameter, is just a bunch of like options to pass in over here. And the third one, which we're going to use, is a callback that's gonna be called once this database is started successfully or not. So there's an error, so we can check if error. We're just gonna console.log error, and over here, so error, and we're gonna say error, and else we're gonna just console.log service started. So we're gonna console log MongoDB has been started successfully. So I don't think I can just like type in correctly or spelling correctly, so I'm sorry for this, guys. Now whenever the MongoDB service is going to be starting, or we link or connect to our database, a new message like gonna pop up, MongoDB has been successfully started. Now what we actually need to do is to retrieve some data, to retrieve the data that, or like save a data into the database. So to save data on database, all you need to do, save, so let me just save data on database. All you need to do is call the create new schema. So that you see this model that we have just compiled over here with the schema. So from the schema of compile the model. So now we can use this model in order to create a new model. So each model over here represents a single user. So we can create a bunch of users. You can create whatever. Let's just try to create a new user. Now actually to save to the database, all we need to do is say Mongos, and not actually like this. So we need to create a new instance of the user. So each one we create that it represents one single user. So we can do that, the model that we have just compiled from the schema. So since we have imported it over here into the user, what we can do is let's some kind of robot equals a new user called robot equals new user, and here you put in the user data. So here you put in your objects and the user data. So for this, I'm gonna put the username, for example, robot, and we put in the password. For example, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, simple as this. Now we have created that. And now after creating the instance, what we need is to save the instance into the database. So using the save method, and here the save method takes a callback. So when the save is finished, you're gonna just call this callback, or call the callback actually, and it takes an error, and it takes another one is the user. So the user we have just inserted, this is like the user data or the user objects, and we check if error. I'm gonna just console the log not save, and else we can console the log user data. So yeah, this should be like very simple thing. And another thing I want to mention about, you should put the MongoDB, not only Mongo over here. So if you just put in Mongo over here, not gonna work. And make sure to specify the database, or better call the collection name over here in order to make it work. So here that should work for now. Now we should go ahead and just try to do Mongo, or just go to node learn MongoDB, which is over here, learn MongoDB and / database test.js, and this should let us know that we have created that and connected the database first. So we have seen this, everything is working okay, everything's working fine. And the second thing, we get our user. So the user is logged out, which means the user has been successfully saved into the database with the username of robots and the password 1234. And as you can see here, or you can notice, is a unique ID which starts with an underscore ID, and it's like a really random big number over here. So what this is actually is like MongoDB gonna insert a unique ID for each item you insert into the database, no matter what. So you can disable this, but I really do recommend not, because this is doing a really nice work and it's unique per item. So yeah, no worries about this. And the other thing I want to mention before finishing this video is there's like this Mongo Campus Link program or software that gonna allow you to check out your database in a GUI interface, which means a graphical user interface. So whenever like you install the MongoDB, this gonna comes pre-installed with it. So you're just gonna open it or search for it and open it, then connect in database. Let me just disconnect over here. You're gonna find it over here. Just let the settings, localhost, the same port, and over here. So just click connect, and it's just gonna take you into your database. And here you can sell that this is all of them are databases. This is our database. Now if you try to access the first user's database, you can find here the data. So the robots and 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can manipulate, find, delete from over here, and you can just do some testing whenever you try to create your application and just test some failures or bugs over here. So it's gonna be very simple. In the next one, so this was a very introductory thing, just trying to save some arbitrary data into the database and show you how everything actually works. So in the next one, we're gonna just take this Pokemon APIs and try to re-implement it in order to make it support a MongoDB and make everything works fine. So the next one, we're gonna take this or take a closer look on that, and you're just gonna learn more about updating, deleting, and finding on the MongoDB, or using the Mongos in order to find the MongoDB collection or database. So all of this actually, guys, very simple, very basic. I will catch you in the next one.